my take on this is very simple. Do not pose yourself or do not portray the security vertical as a cost center, but more of a business enabler. And the moment the leader of security start looking at the bottom line rather than just I need to cover A to Z controls as per ISO or as per NIST, that's a major differentiator.
You've also already worked with cutting edge technologies when we talk about AI and blockchain. How do you weigh the risk and the benefits for, when you're adopting these technologies or incorporating these into your strategy?
See, first of all, the security, in my opinion, should always be the second stage of strategy. The business is the driving factor for strategy. Security should never ever be the first gate they should be crossing. They should be crossing a first gate is, like an ROI on their investment. Is the business case justified in adopting that technology? Is the piece of technology really meeting the business objective? Is it really doing, or is it going to take them to the next level in terms of their goals, revenues, profit, anything, customer experience? If those questions are answered in the favor of that project, then security should come in. Security should never ever come in, and that's my personal take on it. That it should never come in before that.
Hi everyone, you're watching the mainstream. I'm Simran Shivalkar, your host for today, and we are back with a new episode from our exclusive series called Voice of Ciso. Today I have with me Mr. Vishal Vaghela. Vishal, firstly, thank you so much for being a part of the series and joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you as well. When Vishal needs no introduction, but I will still take this opportunity to share a few things about him. He's currently a CISO with over 18 years of experience driving cybersecurity across North America, Asia, and the Middle East. Vishal has also successfully led large scale cybersecurity programs in finance, retail, energy, and government sectors, focusing on AI, machine learning, and blockchain. Known for his ability to align IT strategies with business goals, he has helped various organizations transform their security postures and drive innovation. In this episode, we will deep dive into his journey, the ever evolving role of a CISO, and also try to gather his thoughts on tackling the future of cybersecurity. Firstly, Vishal, like I said, your career spans from multiple regions and across various industries. I mean, retail, energy, and even government sectors. Throughout your journey, what has been the biggest challenge for you when it comes to aligning cybersecurity strategies across diverse cultures and diverse business environments?
So, if I understand your question correctly, it's about diverse industries as well as different regions, right? So, I'll divide my answers accordingly. I believe when it comes to different region, the fundamental things that I consider one of my major challenge is people. Each region has a very different way of operating. You talk about Asia, you talk about Middle East, you talk about North America. It's a very different way of operating, and so does the culture. So the culture is different, and the culture transforms into how people do their day-to-day job. How do they see things? How do they understand and interpret things? So definitely, people has always been the major challenge. And even if you ask anybody who had spent more than 2 decades like me in security, they would say people are always the weakest link also when it comes to cybersecurity, be it an IT engineer, an administrator, or just a normal user. It is their actions that can or cannot put you at risk. So people is fundamentally, I believe, is most difficult part when you cross geographies, when you cross boundaries, when you move from one country to another country. As long as you understand the local culture, how people operate, what do they prioritize, what are the things they value more than others. If you gain that understanding, it's far more easier to get your ideas through. It's far more easier for you to get them on board with the things that you want to do. And the second part is about the industries. It's just like that. So take an example of banking. Okay, banking or financial institutions versus, let's say, retail sector. Both, let's say, you pick up any organization, each of these industry with the equal amount of turnover, revenues, profit, as well as the employee strength. But the way they interpret and understand the risk, it's very different. The banking industry is in the business of taking on risk by handling money, lending money. So they understand risk better than a lot of other industries. And technology is nothing but it's also about risk. Like you can expand as much as you want your technology footprint, but if you do not understand the underlying risk of accepting these new technologies, you might put yourself at a larger failure. So it is the nature of the industry that you work in that would determine how your management and board is equipped to understand the risk. Is it part of the DNA of the company, or is it something that you may have to work hard? So I'll dial back a few years back in my career. I worked for one of the largest consulting organizations. And when I used to go to different customers, sometimes I do a project with a financial company, sometimes I do in a government, or sometimes with the retail. And each of those customers have a very different understanding of technology. Adoption is almost same, but what can go wrong, that understanding was very different.
Absolutely, like because I think, like you said, business culture and the way technology is adopted across various markets, right from whether it's Middle East, Asia region, or even America for that matter. I think there has to be some sort of differentiation. But thank you so much for throwing light on the critical aspects of it. Vishal, I also understand you are currently the CISO at Americana Restaurants, and with budgets often tight, how do you prioritize cybersecurity investments? I mean, what do you prioritize when it comes to building balanced, robust protection, especially in a large organization like yours?
See, everybody talks about budget, and it's a reality, right? It's a today's reality when budgets are being cut down everywhere, no matter which organization you go. So, be it a manpower budget or spend on the technology. So, my take on this is very simple. Do not pose yourself or do not portray the security vertical as a cost center, but more of a business enabler. And the moment the leader of security start looking at the bottom line rather than just I need to cover A to Z controls as per ISO or as per NIST. That's a major differentiator. So the first time I went to my management in one of my organization, I used this example. One of the executive ended up asking me, shouldn't we be doing all these things? And of course, I could have sort of build upon that, and I could have simply said that yes, of course we should be doing all this because they all pose a different risk, and we should be mitigating for them, and it require a larger amount.
Correct.
However, I give an example. So let's say you have a three-story house, ground floor, first floor, and second floor. And each of the floor, you have larger doors and windows, and all of them are open. Should you be really focusing on closing down the windows and the doors of the second floor along with the ground floor, or the priority should be the ground floor first because that's where the easy entry is available to the attacker, to the hackers? So that's precisely what I try to do on a day-to-day basis. No matter how many things I have on my roadmap, each and every initiative, each and every tool, each and every technology has to be risk driven. Unless and until an initiative is addressing a high risk or a critical risk, it is always put on the side to determine, does it really important? Like, is it really something we should be putting our efforts and money into it? Or should we be focusing on larger context? So even on my operation part, within my team, I have a very strict risk and performance indicators, not only for the tools, but even for the team members, including myself, so that are we, by the means of us being in this role or deploying the technology for certain tool, are we really doing it justice by reducing certain major risk? Or are we just, as they say, are these technologies must have or should have? So I generally don't want to focus on the should haves or I shall have that thing, but it's all focused on the must haves. And if the answers aren't clear on any of those questions, then everything gets challenged. Before even anybody else come and challenge us, we challenge ourselves to see if this spend is right or wrong. So I generally, I had incidents in my career where I told management, no, I don't need that money. Just let me optimize what I have, because optimization is also as important as covering or but keep on procuring as many fancy tools as available. So definitely, I don't believe budgets are a constraint if you really understand how to address the high risk. If you just want to do everything and anything that's just shown to you by vendors, by OEMs, if you go to a conference, you like some fancy shiny tools, and if you just want to have it in your toolkit, then probably budget might be a major constraint for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because you also need to see what value it is bringing to the business, no matter what industry you are, working across. But next, along these lines, I am aware that you're leading the development for a long-term strategic roadmap, along with a lot of other things. And you've also already worked with cutting-edge technologies when we talk about AI and blockchain. How do you weigh the risk and the benefits for, when you're adopting these technologies or incorporating these into your strategy?
See, first of all, the security, in my opinion, should always be the second stage of strategy. The business is the driving factor for strategy. Security should never ever be the first gate they should be crossing. They should be crossing a first gate is, like an ROI on their investment. Is the business case justified in adopting that technology? Is the piece of technology really meeting the business objective? Is it really doing, or is it going to take them to the next level in terms of their goals, revenues, profit, anything, customer experience? If those questions are answered in the favor of that project, then security should come in. Security should never ever come in, and that's my personal take on it. That it should never come in before that, because every single business exists to take a risk. You cannot be in the business if you don't understand to take a risk. So, adoption of AI, adoption of blockchain. I have done plenty of security deployment on these projects, but my first and foremost ask from the project lead is always show me your business case and show me all the necessary approvals that you have before even you talk to me. So once the business case is well established, then we try to work around the security and we try to portray the security as an enabler. So yeah, there would be times when the security may not be able to mitigate all the controls or all the risk, and you might end up being some of the higher residual risk for a given project. But that's still okay. That should be okay, because your duty as a security in charge is just to let the management know that you're deploying this blockchain project. Let's say the blockchain project is for the cross-border payment between two largest banks, right? Now, as long as majority of the risk are being addressed by the real controls or by the compensating controls, but in one or the other way, then whatever left, you just let the management know that this is what you're signing up for, this is
Right.
what you're running into, and this is what you're going to happen. As long as you know that, we are okay. And there would be times, like, taking a very simple example. Let's say you're using Microsoft Windows machine. I'm not just simplifying it for very, and there's a 0-day vulnerability for every platform, right? And how can you fix it? No, unless and until the OEM release the patch, you would not be able to fix the 0-day vulnerability. So you're still working with that 0-day vulnerability as a risk, as an underlying risk in your environment. And the same goes for the business. So you have a business, you deployed an AI, you deployed an blockchain, and you adopted RPAs and RDAs, and you just want to move on. You just want to get your business better, a better customer experience, better bottom lines. As long as you're okay with whatever risk you cannot mitigate, you should be okay, and you should sign up and move on.
Right, absolutely. And I think risk it becomes a part the way you approach for business, any kind of innovation for that matter. You need to adopt these into your strategy. But from a CISO's perspective, I also understand that you collaborate closely with a lot of C-suite leaders and board members. I'm sure you might be interacting with a lot of potential consumers as well. So, what is your approach when it comes to making the case for cybersecurity investments to those who may not completely understand the technicalities of it, the nuances of it?
They shouldn't be understanding. Why would the board members and the executive should really have the deep down or knowledge or all the nitty gritty of the technology? They shouldn't be, actually, and that's why we are here. That's why all the technical leaders,
Correct, correct,
CIOs,
correct.
CTOs, CISOs exist, right? So I do not expect any executives or board members to really understand the technical details, and that's why I try to stay away from the technical jargons into any of my presentation to the senior members. But one thing I have seen across the regions, across the industry, Asia or Middle East or Northern American context, or most of like majority of the board members, CEOs and CFOs, there is one common theme. They understand risk better because they are the business leaders. They really understand a cost of not doing something or what can go wrong. So they really understand it pretty well. And I still remember one of the news article I read back in 2010 or 2011 when I just started I was in Canada for a few years, and Barack Obama was elected as a president. And one of the act the USA passed through both the houses was something called Plain Writing Act, something like that. So the that act was, it left a permanent impression on me. It talks about communicating anything in the simplest language possible. No matter what you want to communicate and who's your audience, if you cannot communicate in the simplest language possible, if you cannot communicate where a layman can understand without any background context to it, then probably you are doing a bad job at communicating. And I just taught myself that if a government has to pass on this message and make it an act to simplify the communication, I think the technical people out of any other should really do a good job at it, because sometimes we get carried away. We get carried away by using the maximum jargons possible. And there's so many words to use. Like you have every single technology comes with 5 or 6 new acronyms. And it just, there's an endless list of acronyms. So when you go to board members, when you go to risk committees, audit committees, as long as you can simplify the message, I go back to my example of prioritizing the risk, right? So let's say audit committee come back to me and say that, Vishal, you have these 5 major gaps, 5 major findings in your area. When are you going to fix them? And I say, no, I'll fix only first and second, meaning next year. And the question is, no, you cannot have a finding for 1 year. Then I again use the same example. Do you really want to, spend time on the second story windows and doors where people have to use ladder to get in, or you want me to focus on the ground floor first? So I always try to prioritize simplicity of any messaging, be it your reports, be it like even when I create my dashboards from all the tools, we try to stay away from technical jargons and the numbers, and we try to simplify it. I try to simplify it in a way that everybody can understand. So that just, I think I'm still learning a lot on it, but so far that had worked very well in my favor. And as long as I have the backing of my management, that means somewhere I'm passing on the message pretty good.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that with us today. Moving on, I am also sure that vendor management has become primary to your current role with Americana. How do you ensure that when we talk about external partners, they align with your cybersecurity goals, even though they need not understand the nitty-gritties of the process entirely? But what's the secret that you believe or you follow to maintain those kind of strong relationships?
Honestly, I do not have any shorts or solution for that. Vendors and OEMs are one of the major pain areas. It's really like dating and marriages. You may end up getting a good partner, you may not end up getting a good partner. Sometimes vendors and OEMs really go out of their way to really understand your objective, to step up their efforts, step up their game, and to meet all your objective. And sometimes they don't. So it is an ongoing struggle. I think most of my colleagues from industry would vouch for that. That it's really an ongoing struggle. We try to sort of mitigate it in this following ways. One, we always try to do POCs. Even if we know that we 100% want to adopt this technology, we know that we 100% want to buy this tool, no matter what. But we still do POC, quite advanced before our timelines. So what it does is, we don't want to really see the success of the tool. What I really want to see in that POC 3 months, 4 month tenure is the behavior of my partner, is the behavior of the vendor, the responses and the responses around the technical challenges, how much they are accommodating requests from us, how much they are able to go, even if, most of the time, because they do not have the business yet, they will always try to portray a better picture of themselves, but still you get the jinx of it. Like you
Correct.
really get the idea if somebody is faking it or is it the real picture. And then so far, I think I'm not having 100% success rate by all means, but I'm definitely more than 80%, 90% success rate by this approach. And the last 10%, we try to use the legal ground for it. We try to make our contracts and SLAs which are absolutely in line with my business objective, that doesn't give any room for vendor to move away from the deliverables. And yeah, so these are the two primary tools I have in my kitty to address the vendor challenge. But it's an ongoing pain. By all means an ongoing pain.
Even though we talk about different areas or different sectors of the industry, whether it's, FMCG or if it's energy or if it's government, you think it's the same scenario overall when it comes to managing vendors from a leader's perspective?
It is absolutely the same scenario. But in industry wise, yes. But in terms of the region, it is different. So my experience in dealing with vendors and their attitude or the way they look at the project or the way they see the accountability is different. So I wouldn't say good or bad. I don't want to go on record by calling out anything specifically. But in all these three regions, I have seen a huge difference in terms of how a vendor see themselves accountable to the customer. or to their needs.
Right.
It's very different. And also like the vendor, where they origin from, what are their grassroots philosophies for that vendor, what are their vision statements, not just for the sake of putting it on the website, but some company really try to live by it, some company had just for the sake of website. So region to region I had a lot of different experience. Industry to industry, not much. Like even in India or here or USA or Canada, industry to industry didn't make that much of a difference, but country to country, yes, it did.
Right. Lastly, looking ahead, what do you think today is one of the biggest cybersecurity challenge organizations will face in the next decade, and how should they begin prepping for it? Right now we have cybersecurity landscape changing on. We have AI, we have blockchain, we have quantum making buzzwords. So, what is your take?
I still believe there are two challenges that there is no solution for it, to be honest. These are the two challenges. For everything else, as there's an advertisement you must have seen, for everything else, there's a MasterCard, and I'm not advocating it, but so for everything else, there's a tool. For everything else, there is a technology available to do
Correct.
something. There are two areas where I spent more than 2 decades in this industry, and for two areas, I have not found a single solution. One is people, and the second is called shadow IT. Shadow IT, I'll focus more on that because I think I said a few things on people before. Shadow IT is look at the development of technology. Look at the way everybody using ChatGPT, just one example, okay? It's on your browser. And if your company hasn't blocked it, then just to outsign your colleague sitting next to you, you might throw around the data in ChatGPT to give you better reports at it, to give you better summary of it. So you keep on pushing your data into ChatGPT.
Right.
So that's where the human link comes in picture, and that's where the shadow IT comes in picture. Because the IT guy, the security guy, let's say, take and transform the same thing into a simplistic version. You have a security guard sitting out there in your main gate of your big palace or villa, and there's only one gate to enter. That's what you and security guard believes. However, a lot of members living in the same place start opening the windows in the back and the front and letting people in and sneaking people in. That's shadow IT. The larger the enterprise, the higher the shadow IT risk is, because it's very hard for larger enterprise to have everything centralized. And that transformed into a lot of small teams ended up adopting new tools and technology to do their business. So a lot of adoption of IT into areas where the CIOs and CDOs and the Ciso have zero visibility into it. And if you do not know what to protect, you can't protect.
Right.
For anybody to really put the safeguards against, you really get to know what are the things you have in place. And the shadow IT creates a major gap in that because it is happening outside of entire IT universe of a company. Somebody's opening up a cloud footprint in GCP. Somebody's opening up another cloud footprint in AWS for a small project. And because none of them are really going through an IT, you will have a lot of other areas that you really don't know what to do about it. You don't know who has access to it. You don't know if those being backed up or not, or those are being monitored or not. The controls are endless. Literally, like, and you talk to any executive in IT, and if you ask them honestly, do you really know what exists in your company from a technology perspective? Nobody has an answer for it. And that's the ground reality. Like I speak to a lot of my colleagues from industry. I on a networking event and everything, and I think this things comes out. People don't admit it so loud and clear, but nobody really knows everything in their company. To know 100% of IT footprint, 100% of assets in terms of your hardware, software, SaaS, PaaS, all the services that you are using. As long as you can achieve that, I think you are in a wonderful place. Maybe you are in a top 1% or top 0.1% of the companies. So for me, going forward in future, these two categories would still pose a major challenge. And technologies will come and go. Today we are talking about AI. 5 years down the line, we'll talk about something else. But somewhere in your organization and some corner of some department, people start adopting AI in certain way and start dumping the data to do better analysis, which you are not aware of it. It's shadow IT. And you cannot really do anything about it because you don't know. So, and tomorrow it would be some other technology. I think as long as you know what to protect, it would be easier. But shadow IT, it's a major gap in that. So none of the CISOs or CIOs would be able to make this statement with the confidence that yes, I know everything in my company. No, that's not possible.
So while there is no stopping the way technology is evolving, right now we have AI, just like you said. I think to be aware and to be informed as to what is happening internally is the only key, perhaps, to for organizations to kind of ramp up their entire security posture. Would it be safe to assume so?
It is. I strongly believe so. And a lot of companies are doing a lot of things like process controls, keeping
Correct.
gates through legal procurement, through sign off, risk sign off, like a second line defense sign off. Like I used to work for a second line of defense in one of the largest bank. And as per the process, any team who adopt a technology, even if they are not part of the CIO or CTO or the centralized IT, they still have to get the sign off from the second line of defense. And that's where we come and give them the a complete list of controls required to protect and secure the technology they're adopting. And still, every end of the year, we have findings from the audit that they got kicked off without a sign off. So it's a process. It's not an automation. If it's an automation, yes, you can have a far better control. But as long as there is no automation about people's ability to adopt new technology, this gap would still remain. You can improvise, like you can improve it by putting number of processes like this, sign off, or procurement would always, let's say, the moment it goes to procurement would bring in the IT cybersecurity team. But it's still a dependency on the process and human, which can go wrong, which can fail. So if there is an automation, yes, you can cover this risk to a greater extent. But if there is no automation and if the reliance is solely on the process, then I still stand by my previous answer. People weakest link in your entire cyber chain.
Absolutely. I mean, rightly said. So, thank you so much, Val, for sharing your vision and ideas for the entire cybersecurity landscape. Thank you so much for giving a glimpse of your journey as well as sharing some critical insights into how the industry is evolving right now and how the security landscape is also kind of emerging. So, thank you so much for joining us in this series. While we conclude, I certainly look forward to connect with you again.
Thank you so much for inviting and thank you for bringing me on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you.